Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tyrone Docherty. I'm the president and CEO of First Tellurium Corporation. I'm also the largest shareholder. And if you look at insider reports, you'll see I don't sell, much to the chagrin of my wife at times. I cannot tell you everything in 10 minutes about this company. I couldn't tell you in half an hour. What I can tell you is we're the only company on the planet doing what we're doing. As Brian referenced, we have this unique mineral called tellurium, which is very big in solar panels, which we'll get into. There's our forward-looking statements. But to sum it all up, there's so much going on with our company that if we focus just on the tellurium, which is important, you'll get away from the fact that we are a high-grade gold-silver property that has the tellurium with it here in Canada. I'll just give you a background on myself and the management, because I think it's important that when you're looking at a company, not only as a property good, you kind of look at who the jockeys are and do they have any history. So I run one company at a time. I'm not smart enough to run more than that. My previous company was a company called Quinto Mining. I took over in 1997. It had a market cap of $4 million. I was lucky enough to sell it 11 years later for $175 million. But we decided to take paper in the company that was acquiring us, Consolidated Thompson Iron Mines. So we ended up being about 20 to 21% of their ownership, and they sold 2.5 years later for $4.9 billion. So it made our enterprise value a little over $1 billion, which was pretty good. And we build companies so that we take care of all the red flags, so that when we tell people what we have, they can sort of go to the bank, if you will. So what I'm going to tell you today will probably, for most people, be very unbelievable. So I suggest, I'm telling you the truth. Go and check us out and you figure out what we have. And I brought a little cheat sheet with me, because when I did this in Vancouver, when Chen introduced me, a couple of my shareholders said, well, you forgot to mention this and you forgot to mention that. So as I said, I can't do it justice in 10 minutes. But we'll talk about, I made reference to the tellurium, which we'll get into as far as solar panels. But here's my board of key management. And you see that our QP, our qualified person, is Dr. Lee Grote, who is professor at University of British Columbia and world-renowned. He works for the Japanese and Indian governments when he's not teaching, and he loves our property. And the other gentleman we just added was Dr. Paul Spry, who's at Iowa State University. His specialty is economic geology, and as Dr. Grote said, he's the world-leading expert on tellurium, which is nice to have. So we have 4 people on our advisory board that were involved with First Solar, and the other gentleman on our board is the CEO of Phoenix Advanced Material out of Trail, British Columbia, which is involved in a patent with the University of British Columbia on a phenomenal new lithium tellurium battery. Not solar panel, but lithium tellurium battery, which is far superior to lithium-ion battery, and I'll get into that later on. So I like to surround myself with very bright people. It's much easier that way to guide us. So here's our 2 projects, the Deerhorn project in British Columbia and the Klondike property in Colorado, which used to be owned by First Solar. They dropped it. We picked it up, and there's always reasons that you can pick up properties. It's better to be lucky than good. So I'll get into that if I have time, but I suggest to people that the story is going to be so good, I expect that you'll come and see me at the booth so I can tell you more about it. But we did a PEA in 2018, and that's on 450 meters there of our known zone. It was 2.4 kilometers was our zone. And we did a PEA in 2018. And before I reference that, Dr. Grote and my chairman, Tony Fogarassi, just walked the property in September and October and increased the zone by 1.1 kilometer. So it's actually 3.5 kilometers and still open for our high-grade gold, silver, tellurium property. And what's interesting is we've only drilled down on average 60 meters, 200 feet. Okay, lots of room for expansion down below. But when I finance stuff, I always assume mining is for boom or bust. So I never want to spend all my money and then the market's down against you. So I didn't want to spend all my money drilling down to see if I could hit the jewelry store down below, because if I miss it, then people say, well, you know, what kind of idiot spends his money looking for the jewelry store when everything was laid out on drilling close to surface. So there's our beautiful property. So here's what, again, we only did the PEA on 20% of the known zone. And it came back as robust economics. We put that out in our news release, and the Securities Commission phoned me up, slapped me on the wrist and said, you can't use the word robust, it's too promotional. I said, well, it's not my word, it came from the engineering company, and they phoned to verify that. But to put it in perspective, it was a 1.6-year payback, a 42% IRR after tax, and that was based on $1,300 gold and $17 silver. So obviously, it's even more robust today, and the tellurium is high grade as well. So why now? Okay, the CEO of First Solar, and they use cadmium tellurium mixture in their solar panels, about 14 months ago said in an interview with S&P Global that for themselves, they're going to need 900 to 1,100 tons of tellurium starting in 2024, while the world market's 600 tons of tellurium. So there's going to be a crunch there, obviously, and if China is stopped from exporting tellurium and other critical metals to the U.S., it's going to be even more of a bottleneck. This is a chart of tellurium, and if anyone goes to a presentation from Chen Lin tomorrow, he's got a nice presentation on silver and tellurium as well. As a matter of fact, while I was sitting on the panel there, Chen sent me a message that First Solar announced some huge sales coming up for solar panels. All right, 90% of the tellurium in the world comes from copper refining, 10% from in situ minerals, and we're one of those 4 mines that First Solar talked about in 2012 at a conference in Cologne, Germany. They referenced our Deerhorn property. They mentioned there's a property in China, property in Mexico, ourselves, and one in Sweden. And they said at the time they didn't trust China and they didn't trust Mexico. So obviously that left ourselves and Sweden, and the Swedish property got all of their tellurium sold about 2 years later. So that was us, the lone person left on the surface. Here's a sampling of the Klondike property. To put things in perspective, our Deerhorn property is considered high grade. We average about 160 grams per ton of tellurium with a high grade of 800 to 900 grams. The property that used to be owned by First Solar, their high is 33,000. And they had several in the 10 to 15,000 range. So it's a complete different beast. And we were lucky enough to pick it up when First Solar dropped it, and I like to give people their objections, so when they walk out of the room here, they'll say, or a week from now, they'll say, oh, it doesn't make sense. If First Solar needed tellurium, why would they drop it? And the answer is very simple, that at an annual general meeting in 2010 or 2011, a couple of big investors stood up and said to the board of directors of First Solar, we think you're a bunch of hypocrites. You claim to be a green company, but you're involved in the dirty world of mining. How do you square that circle? So make a long story short, the board of directors of First Solar, I've been told, decided to get together that they would buy their tellurium off the market, end up costing them an extra 1 or 2 pennies per solar panel, but they could keep their heads up. And they sold it to their head of exploration, who formed the company with his buddies, and we picked it up from him 2 years ago. This is the most important thing that's going to change everyone's lives. Everyone knows about solar panels. There's Don Freshy, who's on my advisory board, the CEO of Phoenix Advanced Material, partners with the University of British Columbia on their big announcement last year of a lithium tellurium battery, which is far superior to lithium ion. And as I say to people, you don't have to believe anything I say. It's all verifiable. Go check with the University of British Columbia. And what's the difference between the lithium tellurium battery, according to them, and the lithium ion battery? 5 basic differences. Number 1, it's 4 to 10 times more powerful. Number 2, it's much easier to charge. Number 3, it lasts twice as long. And number 4, size-wise. So a lithium ion battery on average, you're looking at this size. Okay, now we talk about a lithium tellurium battery, which has all of these advantages, and there's the size, measured between your thumb and your forefinger. So what does that do for weight for automobiles or any other people that look for it? Pretty important. And the 5th and final advantage is it's a solid-state battery, which means it cannot catch fire. Lithium-ion batteries can and do catch fire. So I suggest to you, how important will this be for automobile companies and insurance companies? So if that were the only difference, I think it's pretty important, but we know it's a heck of a lot more advantageous than that. So to sum it all up, we've got these two high-grade properties. We're in Colorado and in British Columbia. And what I'm glad I brought my crib notes, because I forgot to mention, is that in addition to our high-grade gold, silver, tellurium, we've also confirmed in September of last year, October, that we're sitting on a copper porphyry. Now, I don't know how many junior companies would love to have a copper porphyry, but that's sort of secondary for us right now. Dr. Grote's over the moon about it. So we have so many minerals on our property. I haven't talked about our high-grade tungsten, that I'd call ourselves Magic Mountain if I wasn't worried about getting sued by Disney. So when I tell you I can't tell you stuff in 10 minutes about the company, I cannot. And last time I forgot to mention that we own 49% of a First Nations company called Chiona Metals, which is involved with two companies in the States called Apple and Tiffany & Company on a project called Salmon Gold. And look it up on the Apple website, Salmon Gold. And what they do, we work with placer miners in Canada and help them rehabilitate their projects after they finish mining, and they ship the gold to Switzerland at a premium because the extra money is used to put back into their properties, and the gold is bought by Apple and Tiffany & Company. Again, I didn't talk about it at the last show because I didn't have any time, and it's very important. And two recent announcements we had, just to let you know, we announced 2 days ago that we've applied for our 10,000-ton bulk sample permit because we believe we're going into production in a couple of years. So we know it's going to be very, very good. And finally, a couple of weeks ago, we bought our own drill because we want to mitigate the fact that we have this wonderful project, but if there's no drills available, it makes it difficult. But the interesting thing is we bought it from a company in Alaska that hadn't used it yet, and it was earmarked for pebble, and they ended up selling it to us at a very good discount. I hope they're not watching this, at a real discount, but they insisted on shares. They didn't want cash because one of their business partners walked the property in October with Dr. Grote and said this is one of the best properties he's ever seen. He was just looking at the porphyry. So it's good when, Dr. Grote says it's wonderful, Tony says it's wonderful, but when you have a driller not only saying it's wonderful, but getting his people to sell you a drill at a discount for shares only, it kind of speaks to what we're doing. So I don't know if I'm over my time or not. You guys all look hungry, so I'll just finish up here in a second. Here's who we are again, Tyrone Docherty. And just to let you know about my chairman, Tony. I've known Tony since high school, and you know the old saying, so-and-so's the smartest guy in the room. Well, Tony's the smartest guy in the room. He graduated gold medalist of geology at UBC. He then got his law degree, and then he went to the London School of Economics and got another law degree. So his specialty for the last 35 years has been in natural resources, but more importantly, if he's not the #1 First Nations lawyer in BC, he's in the top 2. So anyone that's serious about putting a mine into production, better have a good relationship with the First Nations, and ours is spectacular as our ownership in Chiona Metals states. And one final thing is that I anticipate that we're going to get bought out because people are going to need our tellurium, whether it's for the solar panels or whether it's for the batteries, or maybe it's going to be a copper company. And my last deal I mentioned, we sold for $175 million in paper, and the negotiations took all of 10 minutes. Not 10 hours, not 10 days, not 10 weeks, 10 minutes, because the people wanted it. It was a good deal for my shareholders. And I understand the best time to sell something is when you don't have to and other people need it. So again, there's so much more to the story. I know I forgot to say half of the stuff here, but I just thank you for attendance, and our booth is right outside that door, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.